Hi, everyone. So nice to see you all. And as always, thanks so much to the Source team for having me to speak to you today. So my name is Jack Stratten. I run Insider Trends. We're a small kind of retail trends consultancy. But in simple terms, I spend a lot of my life traveling around the world looking at new brands, old brands, getting a sense of what's happening in the world, what consumers are doing, and why the world of retail is shaping up the way it is. And then I try to kind of share some of my favorite, most notable reflections about what I'm seeing. And without kind of sounding incredibly cliched, because I feel like the beginning of every talk that anyone makes these days, whenever I go to anything, everyone always says, this is a crazy time for retail, don't they? Or this is an unprecedented time for retail, or something like that. That feels like a really annoying cliche thing to say, but I really do believe this is a very, very strange and largely unprecedented for retail at large. What I'm going to do in the next kind of half an hour is take you through why I think retail is so odd and challenging, but also exciting and full of opportunity at the moment. And more specifically, why some of the trends that are shaping up mean that for the oldest brands in the world or the newest, I think your story, nailing your story, telling your story, and caring about your story matters more than ever. And that's what I'm going to be talking about in the next half an hour. So I run Insider Trends. We work with brands like this, helping them to spot what's coming next and working on their kind of future strategies, often with a focus on retail stores. I'm going to start this kind of first part of my presentation. I'm really going to think about what I consider the drivers of change. So what customers are doing, but also how things like technology and wider influencers of change, drivers of change, are creating the situation we're in now at large. So I'm packing a lot of big macro trends into kind of 10, 15 minutes. I should also note at this point, my deck will be shared with anyone who wants it, and also a recording. So if I fly through certain slides and you miss something, don't worry. If you're interested in the brands I mention or certain stats, you can get all of that afterwards. So firstly, polarized spending. This is a kind of customer trend that sits underneath everything that's happening. Quite a simple idea, but incredibly important. Polarized spending. So on one side of the fence, you have customers at the moment in every sector and every corner of the world who are incredibly cost conscious. There's nothing surprising about that. We all know it. You will have all seen your own version of these statistics. Cost conscious, sometimes very kind of cost savvy customers. That's everywhere. That's every kind of person in every country in the world. But there's another side of spending that's less talked about, but of equal importance, maybe more importance. And that's the fact that you have a continued growth of luxury. And interestingly, new luxury. All of the growth in the luxury sector is coming from new or different kinds of customers, often younger customers. And also, the fastest growth is among newer luxury brands. If you look at Gucci at the moment, a lot of traditional luxury brands, they're actually starting to flatline or go down. New luxury brands are the ones that are growing. And it's because if you look at that stat, this 26% stat here, that says basically that a quarter of the customers that are really cautious about what they're spending are splurging on luxury items at the same time. It's not a different customer, it's the same customer. Careful all month, really kind of counting their pennies, shopping with maybe discount brands, cheap supermarkets, then once a month, blowing their whole budget on luxury items. We're seeing this happening across the board and all around the world. And it's not really changing. Other indicators of this are, for example, buy now, pay later. Okay, so that's a relatively new concept, but it's huge and it's growing enormously every year. Effectively, what it means is people who can't afford luxury are investing in luxury, are spending on luxury brands. And all the growth in luxury comes from, frankly, people who can't afford it. Massive polarization in spending. How this is reflected in the real world is you have the growth and emergence of totally different kinds of retail experiences. On the one hand, you have Temu. I'm sure lots of people here are familiar with Temu. If anyone asks me what Temu do or what they sell, I always struggle really to frame it because it's everything. So now I just say they sell crap. That's what I say. If you want to find loads of crap that's cheap, Temu's your place. But effectively, Temu react to one part of this polarized spending, we can assess all kinds of aspects of Temu, how brilliantly optimized they are, how they use AI, how their supply chain removes middlemen, loads of interesting things. But you can kind of forget all that. Temu really, most importantly, attract that massive proportion of customers around the world who want sales, who want discount, right? Temu sell incredibly cheap stuff. Irresponsibly cheap stuff, quite frankly, but cheap stuff. Look at the delivery time. Their average delivery time is between 6 and 20 days. What it tells you is all of retail in the last 20 years has been about speed, convenience, optimization. Temu come along and say, we'll deliver something in 2 weeks that's a bit cheaper, and the whole world has gone crazy for it. So ultimately, price still matters more than anything else. Temu appeal to that. But that is just one side of the broad retail picture. Because you have the growth of 1,000 businesses like this. I always use this because they're one of my favorite brands. But you have thousands of businesses like this. This is Fern. Fern are a brilliant business, a business in a sense that are as old as time. Beautifully made products that's quite expensive because it reflects the work that goes into the products. They're perfumes that are made in Cornwall, and they're sold on a subscription basis. 4 perfumes a year, spring, summer, autumn, winter, that's it. Temu, Shein offer you infinite choice, a never-ending selection of infinitely cheap and available products. Fern are the opposite. 4 products a year, quality products, well-made, great story attached to the brand. They invest in people, they invest in product. Here's the really interesting point. In our research, we're noticing that brands like this, their customers are buying from Shein and Temu and them. It's the same customer in many instances. The same person that makes that incredibly cheap decision, that decision with potentially the unethical brand, are also buying from brands who sell themselves on ethics, on quality, on story. So this polarized spending idea, to me, is really fundamental to everything that's going on in retail. You could also frame it simply as a customer that's incredibly hard to read, very unpredictable, very contradictory in some terms. Another part of this is what is often referred to as the choice paradox. The choice paradox is the kind of psychological consumer idea that when we have too much choice, we actually get really confused. We want a retailer, we want a brand to give us a curated selection of products. In most cases, that's not what we get. So 87% of customers now begin product searches online. The consequence of that has been infinite choice, because ultimately, it's very easy to show us everything online. Most online retailers, naturally, inevitably, and rightly, show us an enormous product selection. That's how most retail works these days. But 64% of customers feel overwhelmed by choice. So they start online, but they quickly become overwhelmed. This is really confusing because part of Shein's non-stop growth is infinite choice. Give you a sense of that infinite choice, they release between 2,000 and 10,000 new styles every day. I was told by someone who's an expert in AI that in many cases on Shein's app, you're looking at products that don't even yet exist. Because what they're showing you are products that their AI has copied designs of on the internet, reproduced, and if enough people click on it, those designs get sent to a small factory in China, created, and shipped. So sometimes you're looking at clothing that doesn't exist. That's the extent of choice we're at. Imagine the freedom of choice that gives you as a brand. If you can create things that don't even exist, it's extraordinary. So that's the scale of choice at one end. At the other end, again, you have so many retailers and brands that are surviving and thriving for the opposite reasons. Wolf and Badger, many people will know Wolf and Badger, online and offline, beautiful kind of, they're like a sort of mini department store. They're removing product. They're getting rid of product. They're finding that the less product they have online, the better they do overall. They're reacting precisely to that paradox of choice. They're recognizing that there's too much choice for customers. So they're offering them less. And that's tied directly with their ongoing success. I mention them because so many retailers, so many brands, in response to Shein, Temu, Amazon, Walmart, infinite choice, are shrinking their choice because that's the bit of the market they can do well in, and there is a massive consumer group for that. And I'll come back to this, but honestly, and I can't emphasize it enough, I don't really think there's a retail strategy for doing what Shein, Temu, Amazon, or Walmart do, because you can't build that. You can't compete with them. So you have to play in the huge area that's left learn from them, sure, but you can't do that. And that's what brands like Wolf and Badger are doing. Now, in terms of also bringing home to you some of the other drivers of change and why retail, as I said at the beginning, it's a huge cliche, but feels in a period of unprecedented change. You also have more brands, more channels, more AI. To give you a sense of how easy it is to create a brand now, if you are an influencer online and you don't sell anything, a company like Pietra will find you and say, would you like to sell something? We can make you a business. What you're interested in, and you say, okay, I'm interested in footwear. Pietra will manufacture that entire business in a couple of weeks. They'll design a product, they'll design a website, they've got all the supply chain links already. They will make you a business. You have the following, they'll make you a business, and voila, in a matter of weeks, you have a brand. That's why social media types, TikTok creators, all these people create businesses so quickly. It's never been easier to start a brand. Because it's never been easier to start a brand, it's just stalling a little. Because it's never been easier to start a brand, we have a consequence of that, which is that there's less loyalty than ever before. So this graph shows you the percentage of customers shopping with more retailers than they did 5 years ago by category. It's a really simple idea, but it is so often ignored. It's easier to create brands, so there's more brands, but the more brands there are, the less loyalty. We forget this. Yeah, it's easier to create a brand, but it's harder to survive more than a couple of years. It's a simple reality, but everyone running any kind of business, established or not, has to constantly remind themselves of this. Great that it's easier, but actually, it's a real challenge at the same time. So many brands means less loyalty. Also, so many channels, so many places to communicate with brands online and offline, so many places to sell. So the average customer interacts with a brand across 20 different channels in the course of their engagement with a brand. That's why, and I'm showing here, every brand under the sun is screaming at all of us. Because there's now so many brands, we are all desperately saying to consumers, notice me, love me. And that's why even Heinz ketchup, not just Dolce & Gabbana, are trying to stand for something, are trying to be cool, are trying to be sexy, are trying to somehow grab us. That too is saturating. That too is a problem when it comes to choice. We can't see the wood from the trees as consumers. And this continues to build. We also then, and it's important to emphasize this, we also then have AI plugging into all of this. And I'm not going to go into AI. Everyone talks about it too much. We all talk about it in abstract terms like it didn't exist 15 years ago. Most people, when you hear AI, still think about robots in 1980s movies. The whole thing is a strange, abstract idea, but we can't ignore it. And when you plug AI, and I mean, in this case, predictive AI, into this mad, saturated retail environment, it becomes even more extraordinary. What I showed at the beginning of this slide is the fact that Netflix now say the vast majority of everything people watch is shaped by their AI. They're telling you effectively what to watch, and it's AI that's driving that. Then you have generative AI, like the type Shein used to actually generate new products. So predictive AI, which is shaping what we're doing as customers, and a generative AI, which is giving us products. Both ends, again, feeding into this enormous saturation. And that's why, and I wanted to kind of show you two retail kind of stories over the last couple of years that almost sum up this whole thing. And it's quite a sad story to me, to be honest. Matches Fashion, a retailer that I always loved. A retailer I think worked really hard to put together a really great selection of brands that stood for something, had good products. And then you have Shein. And Matches Fashion's online experience is logical. It's quite pleasant. There's not too many products. You can navigate it quite easily. You can navigate it by kind of product category, by male, female. You're not too overwhelmed, and they don't throw sales at you. They don't throw targeted advertising at you. But what Matches Fashion don't have is a kind of supercharged AI plugged into their online experience. So whilst it looks pleasant, this one, which to me is like the equivalent of, I don't know, spending an hour in like the worst kind of bingo or casino hall you've ever seen in your life, just like terrifying and depressing, is the world's most successful app, basically. That or Temu. This that you're looking at, this nightmare, is because of AI, works incredibly well. Meanwhile, matches fashion goes through the struggles that we all know about. So it's hard for us, I think, as brands, as retailers, as consultants, as makers, to go through the journeys that a lot of us go on about creating the right retail experience, because here the right retail experience didn't work, and what many might think of as the wrong one, this unappealing one, has worked incredibly well. That's another reason that all of this is becoming so incredibly complicated. The good news is some of the kind of frightening, scary, doom and gloom stuff I've presented there, I'm now going to move into some more positive things. Because there is a whole other side to this. I wanted to give a couple of big mass market stories here. So I'm not talking about niche brands. Here I'm going to show you two brands who are two of the most successful retailers currently in the world, and they're essentially ignoring so much of what I just told you. This is Trader Joe's. Who knows Trader Joe's in the US? Trader Joe's is an American supermarket. Trader Joe's are the fastest growing American supermarket. That's ridiculous for anyone that knows grocery in America. American grocery is ludicrously competitive, but also dominated by businesses like Costco, like Walmart. Effectively, these are technology businesses. They have so much money to invest in technology. They are optimization technology monsters. They control all the data. They can do everything that is supposed to make a brand grow, a retailer grow and be successful. Meanwhile, there's this one supermarket, now with more than 500 stores that everyone is obsessed with in America, that is like going to a supermarket in the 1970s. Every single one looks like this. Every one of their more than 500 stores has hand-painted signs. They employ an artist in every one of those supermarkets. That person, all they do every day is go around painting signs above products. Every single item they sell is handwritten. Their checkouts have these tiny old-fashioned tills, but they're built around mahogany. The whole thing is like a weird, it sort of feels like it's a sort of abstract art exhibition or something, like someone's kind of showing you the past. And it's so successful and everyone loves it. Why do they love it? They love it precisely because there is a story here. When you go there and you talk to the people, there is a story. Every single one is attached to the local community, painted and drawn to reflect the local community. They work tirelessly to tell you the story of Trader Joe's, to try and make you fall in love with what they do. The entire thing is about that, and it's so incredibly successful. And it always reminds me that there is still this kind of essential part of retail that is the same as it ever was, about having products and a brand that actually sort of means something beyond pure transaction. That still has a mass market value, not just a niche value. And I say Uniqlo within this mix as well. Uniqlo now, one of the most successful fast fashion businesses. And a lot of the work we do in assessing these kinds of brands tells us the reason that Uniqlo are doing so well isn't AI. It certainly isn't e-commerce. It isn't optimization. One of the biggest reasons Uniqlo is so successful is that they're investing in story. In their case, in many cases, the story of the buildings they're in. Uniqlo are actively buying some of the most expensive and old businesses in the world. They're buying old art galleries. They're buying extraordinary old buildings and then putting their products within them. What it does to the customer is it says, we're a brand that has a story. We're a brand that actually cares about history, about heritage, about the quality of the products that we produce. And they almost make people think they're not a fast fashion brand. They are a fast fashion brand. But a lot of people that buy from Uniqlo don't see them as a fast fashion brand because when you walk into stores like their flagships in Madrid and Paris and like their flagship in Covent Garden or Regent Street here, you think, well, this can't be fast fashion. It's beautiful. It's incredible. They're actively investing. You'll see so many mass market brands now doing the same thing, trying to create meaningful stories, meaningful retail experiences around what they do so that we start to believe in the brand and that it can occupy this whole other part of retail that isn't transactional, that isn't just about technology and AI. And so I'm really, really passionate about the idea that there is this whole part of retail that is transactional, data-fueled, optimized, but that stories still matter. It matters so much, in fact, and whatever kind of business you run, whether you're the newest, smallest business or you've been around forever, the thing that will make you survive long term, the thing that actually matters, is whether your product, your brand, your people stands for something beyond just selling the world more crap. because in the future that has to mean something because it's the right thing for the planet. But actually, it has real business model sense to it. It means something. I just want to show you here some of my favorite examples of brands I think that tell stories, different kinds of brands who tell stories in all kinds of ways. The first grouping is kind of culture-led stories. So these are brands whose stories are built around the culture of the brand itself or the culture of their customers. I want to start with Gentle Monster. I'm such a huge fan of Gentle Monster because their stores are like no others I've ever seen in the world. So I don't know if anyone knows who they are, but from these pictures, you wouldn't know what they sell. They sell glasses and sunglasses. Every single one of their stores around the world is like a kind of modern art exhibition. They're extraordinary. Their stores aren't designed by retail people, they're designed by artists. But they have made that their story. Their story is about art, about inspiration, about boldness, about surprising and delighting every person that goes into one of their stores. They think it really matters that when you walk down the street, you stop and go, what is that? That doesn't look like anything else I've seen today, even if you really dislike it. Gentle Monster want you to dislike it. They just want you to have a feeling. And that's what they do, and it's behind so much of their growth. They don't sell anything in these stores, and yet they have 12 of them around the world. These are marketing spaces, these are advertising spaces, but they're part of their story. Their story being we're more than just a company that sells glasses and sunglasses. We're about creativity, we're about inspiration, we're about art. And it works, and it's part of why they're standing the test of time. Kith are a brand and now a retailer that I really love. And Kith do exactly the same thing. They understand the culture of their target customer. And they are building a brand that says, we see you. Kith are kind of a luxury brand. They sell quite expensive products. They never talk about luxury. What they say to this group of customers is, we know the LVMH brands, the Guccis of this world don't really speak to you, but we also know that you want to buy stuff that you're going to have forever, that maybe you're going to resell in the future. We're speaking to you. We're going to be the luxury brand without talking about luxury. We're a new luxury brand. And they do better among young customers than the luxury brands, the traditional luxury brands do. It's because they've identified the culture and they've embraced that culture, and they do it brilliantly. Huckberry in New York are one of my favorite brands for this. So, they've been around for a long time. But what they do in their stores and online, they almost forget about the product itself. They focus so completely on the culture that everything is about the lifestyle around each product. So if they're talking about one of their candles, they'll start talking about interior design. If they're talking about boots, they'll spend most of their time talking about hiking. And if they're talking about jackets, they'll talk about motorbiking. And it's not an added thing. It's not a kind of trendy thing. In any of their stores, that's what it is. And then what happens is they build this kind of cult following among the people who care about biking, among the avid readers, among the interior designers, and not just people who care about this random selection of products. It gives them some meaning online and offline. And that's the story. It's not the product. It's not really even the brand. It's the culture that their customers consume and experience. I often talk about Flamingo Estate as one of the kind of weirder new brands that I share. They're doing incredibly well, but one of the best new storytelling businesses I've seen. So as you'll see from the opening video, a very strange brand. So Flamingo Estate is this estate in the Californian hills that you're shown with their videos, where these beautiful people, who are often naked, you're told are manufacturing all of those products that you can see here. And you're immediately kind of taken into this world where every single product you tie into that place, that moment, that culture. What that does is quite transformative. This is their best-selling product here. This is a tiny jar of dried strawberries. They sell them for $80 each. This is their best-selling product. They sell tens of thousands of these. No one eats them, I don't think. You see these jars appearing on the Instagram feeds and videos of the great and the good across the US. People just want to show that they know Flamingo Estate. They're part of the club. And for all that this can seem a bit kind of fickle, a bit ridiculous, a bit of a brand and marketing exercise, what's going on here is story. The power of this story is allowing them to sell an $80 jar of dried strawberries that people don't even eat. That is the power of story when you get it right. They don't even have stores. They're doing this online, but such is the quality of the storytelling and how much they invest in it. They can sell products that actually this brand has very little relationship with. There's nothing within the story that says that their main product should be a dried strawberry, but it doesn't matter. And I always say, if they can sell dried strawberries, imagine if you're a brand with some history that sells shoes, imagine what you can do if you properly double down on the beauty of that story. And the final point here I wanted to make is when you're a culture-led storytelling brand, you can start to appear in all kinds of interesting places. Backdrop and Madewell, that's a paint company and a jeans company. London Mural Festival brought loads of different brands onto murals on the side of buildings. Made started appearing in airports. If you have a story, you don't need to just be in stores or online. You can be anywhere because it becomes a continuation of the story, and your story can happen anywhere and everywhere. When you're a truly culture-led brand, you can be anywhere, and you can benefit from the power of that. I now want to reflect a few community-led stories. So these are where I think people are really at the fore of the storytelling. And these brands that I'm going to show you are amazing at making people tell the story, amazing at bringing other parts of their community into that story. Firstly, I wanted to mention John Lewis. I always like to reflect a mix of big, traditional and non-traditional brands. Now, John Lewis have been struggling for a while. I always caveat by saying, let's not forget, John Lewis run the hardest type of business in the world. Imagine a business now where you say most of your stores are huge and in the most expensive places to run. I mean, it's a nightmare. No one would choose to do what John Lewis do now. Not to mention the fact that they sell every kind of product, which online can replicate so easily. So this is a hard business to run, but I never forget, John Lewis are a pioneer, always have been. And when it comes to community-led storytelling, they remain a pioneer. I meet very few parents, I'm a parent, who don't at some point have an experience in John Lewis that they tell people forever, where you go in and you spend 2 hours learning sort of almost how to be a parent, how a buggy works, what kind of cot you might need, how those first few weeks and those first few months are going to work. John Lewis do that for free. They've done it for free forever. They don't even try and sell you anything. It's extraordinary, but it becomes part of their fiber. It's why John Lewis's best-selling categories are often buggies, are often children's clothing, because they believe in the power of community, of just helping people, doing something positive beyond just selling stuff. Raffarum, probably my favorite community-led brand in the world. They open spaces all over the world that don't sell their premium cycle gear. They're not interested in selling it in those spaces. It's all about community building, getting cyclists together to go on bike rides, have a coffee, share stories, watch the Tour de France in the evening over a beer. The whole retail selling side of their business is actually about the people who love Rafa, not the customers, but the fans. That's what they focus on. They're entirely a community-led. Most of their storytelling is kind of done by their own customers, not even the brand themselves. And Maisonette in the US, I think are so worth looking up if any of you run a smaller business, of how to grow a smaller business these days. An online kind of children's nursery and furniture retailer who focus entirely on feeding a community of mums and dads brilliant, useful content, helping them, advising them, nurturing that community, and then selling is a secondary thing. Selling doesn't happen until long after they've given people so much useful stuff, so much stuff that really means something to them. The selling is secondary. And it's been incredibly successful for them. It's almost like content feeding commerce. It's done exactly the other way around. And finally, I wanted to give a mention to a small business that I love who have built a community through an email newsletter. So painted jackets, they make 3 or 4 jackets a year in a batch, and they sell out within a matter of hours simply through an email newsletter that's gone viral. That's the entire brand. But this community that sometimes meets for a secret event, for a new launch for the jacket, is a real living thing and meets up in different locations because they all love these fantastic jackets that they make. That's the whole business, partly about the brand, partly about the product, but actually about the community, a shared community who care about really well-made products. And I wanted to finally mention that this can really, that the idea of a community-led brand can really go anywhere, and it can even reinvent a business. Lico in Stockholm, and I'll show you this video because I wanted to give you a sense of how successful they are. Lico is Boots, effectively. Lico is just a mass-market beauty retailer that does a bit of pharmacy, and it kind of always was. Family-led business, they've been around for a long time. But most young customers of Lico don't even think of them this way anymore because they've invested so much online and offline in building a community, in standing for something, in supporting new brands, in being more than transactional, that they have probably the best and busiest beauty store, perhaps store of any kind I've ever seen in Stockholm. There is a queue like this almost every day to get into the store. Imagine a queue for Boots 7 days a week. But because they've obsessively told this community of young shoppers and buyers, we're for you. We have your products. We're going to support you. We're going to help you. You're our customer and you matter to us. And every moment you go into this store or any of those stores, you genuinely feel that. So yes, you've got painter jackets and these cool niche brands, but you also have mass market retailers like Lyko, who've almost reinvented themselves by investing entirely in community. And it really can work, and it really does work, but of course it requires a kind of commitment on a big scale. Finally, I wanted to mention heritage-led stories. I think brands, particularly traditional brands, forget how important history is. I think it's easy to write off history as something that's only for maybe your more traditional customer, the customer that's always been there. What we forget is, to a new customer, history says, this stuff is quality. We've lasted. We're here because it's always been good. Because let's face it, so much of new retail, new brand, D2C brands come and go all the time. History tells the customer, no, we've been here for a long time because what we make is brilliant and what we do is brilliant. Heritage is, I think, so many retailers' is kind of secret weapon. Puig, the parent brand of lots of beauty and luxury businesses, have among their kind of among their array of businesses, Karma Ayurveda. It's in Notting Hill. If anyone gets the chance to visit this store, you must. It's extraordinary. Karma Ayurveda is an Indian beauty brand, an extraordinary business. And what they have in India, and they're huge in India, completely unknown near enough everywhere outside the world. Puig brought them to the UK and Europe, and aside from having a really beautiful and distinct kind of design and feel, in the basement of every single store they have a qualified dermatologist. Now, I'm not talking about the kind of beauty clinician you might get in a Boots, in a kind of flagship Boots. I'm talking about a dermatologist with 25 years experience in the basement. And every customer that comes in gets a free 15-minute assessment with that doctor. No technology. You just sit down and you have this beautiful experience. You sip a lovely kind of tea, and they give you this assessment that feels like it's been done for generations. And it has. It's part of that, apparently, how a lot of Indian beauty works in the kind of luxury end. And Karma are now going to reproduce this model in department stores, in retail stores across Europe. And it's all about their history. As soon as you walk in, they say, we may look new, but in India, we're one of the oldest brands around. And we're going to give you that historic, beautiful, person-led experience every time you walk into one of their stores. And they're doing incredibly well already. They're in Harrods, they're in Selfridges. Everyone wants a bit of this. And again, it's because of story. It's because it actually seems to stand for something. It's easy to sometimes forget Dr. Martens. They're one of those brands that's always there. People talk about them and then they forget about them and they talk about them there. And that's part of their brilliance, because some things they've never stopped doing, like constantly reminding you of the history and heritage of their products, online and offline, rather than just completely drowning you in choice and overwhelming you with discounts. They say, do you know what? We're going to keep reminding you why these few iconic products are so good. Because all these brilliant, iconic people throughout history have worn them. And because they're made so brilliantly. And because they're still made so brilliantly. Every time you go into a store, every time you go online, they keep on reminding you, we're still here selling to you because this product's amazing. They don't have to tell you that that's the reason so many of their competitors disappear and struggle. It's inherent from what they're telling you. History matters and it works. And it's precisely why brands like Dr. Martens are still relevant. And I think also that history can appear within brands in lots of interesting ways. One of the best retail experiences I ever saw was this IKEA breakfast in bed pop-up. It went viral. They did it at a few different IKEA places. And basically, it invited you to come with a loved one and lie in bed for a morning in their store and have breakfast brought to you. But what it really did is reminded you, and the experience, what it was really about, was reminding you what IKEA was about, what it stood for. Because the whole marketing campaign around it wasn't their furniture is affordable, their furniture is good quality. It was, we've always been a brand that wants to bring families and loved ones together. That's the point of what we do. That's why we do what we do. That's what we care about. And that's what this specific execution was for. And in reality, it was a tiny thing they did at a few stores, but in terms of marketing and brand, it was enormous because it was this moment of reminding us, oh yeah, IKEA, they are always there in those big moments. They are. They're everywhere. Everyone has an IKEA item in their home, and this brought life and love into this kind of mass market, transactional experience and world. And finally, I just wanted to point out that history can also, I think, help a brand move into different places and different directions. Liberty are a renowned beauty retailer in their own right. Loads of the world's best beauty brands, they want to be listed within Liberty. What's fascinating is one of Liberty's best-selling beauty ranges now is their own brand of perfumes that they created. And they're really, really expensive. And everyone loves them. But all they've done is just plant history onto a new product. And that's why they're doing so well. And the whole story that they're telling around these perfumes and the whole story that you're buying as a customer is that little piece of history on your shelf. That's what this is about. And suddenly, their beauty range is becoming really, really important. It's really, really growing. It's really successful. It sells really well online and in store. But again, all it is, if another retailer with no history had done this, there's no way that they'd be competing with these incredible history-backed luxury beauty brands within their own space. But history can allow you to move into different sectors even, into different places. It has such power. Now, I've kind of gone through so many different ideas and thoughts, so I'm going to attempt to kind of recap, but also finalize in a really simple way. I think that low price is fundamental to everything that's happening, but what we overlook a lot is that the other side of low price is an idea, the fact that the whole world is looking for cheap stuff. Actually, in response, there's a hell of a lot of polarized spending. Customers don't just want cheap, and cheap isn't a story. So spending is polarized, despite the fact that all the economic news we get around the world is gloomy. Spending is polarized. People spend a lot of money on some things and not a lot of money on other things. More brands, more channels, infinite choice. Technology and AI plugged into that. That is the reality that we all face. But underneath it all, there's a huge demand for curation. We see that in all of the consumer surveys we do. We see it with the brands we talk to. Customers are overwhelmed by choice, and in many cases want you to tell them what they should be buying. They want guidance. They want curation. They want effort put into giving them the right selection. And so many brands are successful when they do that. The other point is that AI, predictive and generative technology, the point that we're now at a point where most brands have more data about how we are, our behaviors, our spending, than they could ever even use. All that data, all that technology, all that AI, do you not notice that what it produces in most cases is just more of the same? Because that's what the data tells you. The data says customers like this, and then the brands make more stuff like that. So we end up in this sea of sameness that customers are struggling to navigate. And let's not forget, that's the massive Achilles heel of brands like Shein and Temu, is that they are at the mercy of whatever customers are saying they want or doing. And if suddenly that shifts, it's hard for them to react because all they're doing is following this rigid data. It's complicated. More of the same is actually needing more need for something distinct. There's two options, I think, at large. If we look at what Shein and Temu are doing, Amazon have looked at that and said, we're going to copy. So Amazon have just announced that they're launching a kind of online marketplace that will ship items directly from Chinese factories to customers. They're literally going to copy what Shein and Temu do. It will be more expensive because Amazon won't be able to utilize the shipping loopholes that Shein and Temu utilize. So essentially, Amazon are saying they're going to do the same thing as Shein and Temu, but a little bit more expensive. To me, the most ridiculous crap retail strategy I've ever seen. Especially for a business like Amazon that here maybe had an opportunity to do something a little bit more positive. To remind people, you know, we're an American brand and actually maybe we could improve global supply chains, not just jump on board this really damaging new supply chain. That's the decision they've made. Fascinatingly, Walmart have just announced they're going in the exact other direction. Walmart being Amazon's biggest competitor, they've now started to release American-made. They're investing enormously in American factories. Part of their plan now is to produce more in America that will be more expensive because they think, do you know what? The real opportunity here is not copying them, it's doing something different, it's trying to be better. And they've announced the products will be more expensive. I wanted to finish on this because it's a reminder that where I'm saying that a big part of the retail world is not being Shein or Temu or other mass market AI optimized brands, but telling a story, standing for something. This isn't just for niche brands, this isn't just for new brands, it might actually be for the biggest brands in the world too. So this could be real, smart, meaningful retail strategy, not just something that is for niche consumers, niche brands, and this tiny little bit of retail that's left. Thanks so much for listening to me. And if anyone has any questions, please fire away. Any questions I take? No questions. There's total agreement with everything I said. Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for having me, and enjoy the rest of your time here.